Fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to episode 336 of the Falcoholic Live. I'm your host, Kevin, at Falcoholic Kevin, joined by the man himself, Dave Choate, at the Falcoholic, and he is here to help us break down the most important training camp battles for the Falcons, which that's coming up, guys. 2 weeks, I think, from tomorrow, we will actually get Falcons players on a practice field, and there will be things happening. I can't speak to day one, like how exciting those things will be, but it will be happening. And we're going to be talking about it live, obviously, because Adnan and I will be there. But before we get there, we're going to talk about what we're going to be looking for. And that kind of starts with these critical training camp battles. There's a number of them that I'm sure we'll get to tonight. Maybe some sneaky ones in here as well. Of course, before we do, I want to welcome in the man himself, Dave Choate. Dave, welcome back to the show. Before I ask how you are, anything to the rumors that you were waiting for Adnan to go on his vacation before you stepped in? Is there any truth to these rumors?
Are we fighting over the Twizzler sponsorship? Possibly. I can't say. Really.
Okay.
It could be any number of things.
Yeah, I respect it. We got to, we don't want to air out too much of the internal drama of the Falcoholic on this program, but we'll keep our ears to the ground on this one. And if anything, I know you'll be the first to make a statement if something does occur. But we appreciate having you back, Dave. How are you doing?
Good. Yeah, no, it's been a nice, mostly quiet summer, getting ready for Falcons football. It's been refreshing not to think too much about Kirk Cousins until yesterday.
Yeah. It's just the one thing. I feel like there's one topic every summer that we just want to get away from. Like, I feel like a couple of years ago, and this one has kind of come back into the forefront, like, why didn't the Falcons go after Lamar was one, and why did the Falcons take Michael Penix was one, and then why is Kirk Cousins saying all these things? I feel like that's been 2 years now, actually, we've been talking about that.
Yeah.
But, it's just unavoidable. There's always going to be some onerous topic that we'll have to get into, but we're professionals. We can handle it with grace or not, sometimes, but
or not.
But I'm glad to have you here, guys. We'll probably touch on Cousins a little bit, but this is mostly about looking forward, not back. But we got that tonight. We're going to get into a little bit of Tristan Wirfs talk because that's obviously really important for week one. Big matchup, big opportunity for Atlanta in that week to sort of set the tone here for this season. Before we get any further, I want to bring you guys a real quick word from our sponsor, BetOnline, folks. BetOnline is your number one source for all sports betting information. Obviously, baseball is in full swing. Again, not going to linger too much on the Braves. Not really going to bring that up. So no, it's a sore spot right now. But football season is right around the corner. We're almost there. For those of you, I don't think there's any training camp props. I don't think there's any, completion percentage and training camp stuff going on. But there is definitely preseason betting that you could do if that's your game. Personally, it's a little too much for me, a little too spicy, but not going to judge anyone that wants to get in on the preseason action. They've also got, regular season futures and all that good stuff coming your way. I know they've got week one stuff ready to go. They've also got UFC, tennis, NFL futures. BetOnline is just your top choice for all the sports wagering information you need. Also, they've got their new BetOnline casino with all the top Vegas style games, including poker, live slots, casino games, all that stuff. If that's your speed, just make sure when you sign up to use our promo code BELIEVE. It's BLEAV to get access to the latest promotions, and make sure you sign up for their industry-leading VIP program with they've got level up bonuses, weekly cash boosts, sort of a loyalty, sort of rewards program type of thing. So I think that's cool. You can check that out as well. BetOnline.ag. The game starts here. Shout out to those guys for sponsoring the show. And this is not a commercial plug. This is a personal plug for all of us. But as of this afternoon, we do officially have a time, date, and location for our Falcoholic fan meetup in Atlanta for training camp. It's going to be Saturday, January 26th, starting at 6 p.m. And we're going to be at Firemaker Brewing in Midtown in Atlanta. Firemaker's graciously agreed to host us. We're excited to be there. And they've got a lot of great brews. It's one of my favorite places. I sort of scouted out last time I was in Atlanta to see some good spots for this. They've got a great setup. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. If the tech works and they're supportive of the live show, we're going to try to do a live show there. We'll have to double check, the tech when we get there, but we'll try to do a show if we can. Otherwise, we'll just hang out, have some great brews, have some great chats. Last time we did this a couple of years ago, it was a lot of fun. We were really looking forward to doing it again. So I'm excited to get down with that, and just wanted to give you guys the scoop as soon as we could so you can make your own plans. But Dave, we're gonna get a Dave Choate appearance. We're only giving you 2 weeks here. It's gonna be tough to swing, but one of these years we're gonna have to plan this out like further in advance, so we might actually have a chance of a Dave Choate appearance, because I think everyone would go crazy for that. I mean, that would be a much bigger draw than myself. So
I don't know about that, but I would love to make it. It's been a running gag at this point how long it's been since I've made a live appearance in Atlanta during the season. The last time I came down was during the bye week, I think a few years back. So I am due. But in the meantime, I can record some punchy phrases. We can put my face on a piece of cardboard and we'll get like halfway there. Yeah.
We'll have that just put up in the background of all the shots. No, we will definitely try to get an event with Dave where he actually has a feasible chance of showing up. And shout out to Nico for remembering last year's event. We had to cut short the recording because of a thunderstorm. That is correct. Firemaker notably has given us the green light to move indoors for the recording if necessary for the weather. So shout out to Firemaker. Excited to work with those guys, and I think it's gonna be a really fun event. So we hope to see you guys there. In on-field news, we'll start with some kind of breaking news that we got. This is a gift from the football gods. It's really more of a curse because Tristan Wirfs is a tremendous player, one of the best tackles in football. It's going to suck not to see him out there. I probably won't shed any tears in week 1 because the Falcons play the Bucs that week, but it's a major injury for a Bucs team that's obviously planning to repeat in the NFC South, and the Falcons get to play the Bucs in week 1. And notably also the Bucs let their swing tackle walk in free agency, so they have a new swing tackle as well. It's looking like maybe an opportunity here for Atlanta, but what do you think the fallout is from this major injury to the Bucs?
I think we're gonna see sort of Baker Mayfield is an up and down player. Like I just had 3 thoughts going there at once, but he is an up and down player, and I don't like his chances of being up while his star left tackle is out. So to me, not only is this a tremendous standalone opportunity, you hate to see it come because of an injury, obviously, but it is an opportunity nonetheless. It's not just that it's good for the Falcons as a team, but it's also sort of a nice early feast for the pass rush, right? To go from Wirfs to a less experienced, significantly less talented fill-in option on Baker Mayfield's blind side is kind of a big deal. So to me, that is, for a team that did a nice job against the Buccaneers a year ago, and weirdly maybe just the Buccaneers, being able to break in against a defense that's talented but still has some holes, and then have a major piece of the Bucs offense missing, I think is absolutely huge. And I don't want to say you have to take advantage of it, because we all know that week 1 for the Falcons is usually a time of frustration and trial, but it's definitely gives them an opportunity to say, last year was not just Kirk Cousins catching fire against Tampa Bay. We are actually better than you head to head. And that does help that along.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's an opportune time for such a thing to happen for Atlanta, where they're going to be breaking in a lot of new pieces on defense, particularly in the edge rotation. I mean, the only guys returning are Arnold Ebiketie, who's probably going to start. I feel like he's suddenly the forgotten man, but I still think Arnold Ebiketie is probably going to start. And I'm fine with that. Like, I think this is actually a nice setup for him where he doesn't have to be the only guy. Maybe we'll see, Zach Harrison actually playing edge again. So I think that counts. But otherwise, Leonard Floyd's new to the picture. We didn't really get to see anything from Braylon Trice. Obviously, we've got the big rookie additions, Jalen Walker, James Pierce Jr. out there as well. But it can't hurt. And I think Luke Goedeke for the Bucs has looked a lot better playing tackle than he did playing inside. So at right tackle, doesn't seem to be a liability like he was at times playing inside. But when you lose an all-pro, I mean, there's ripple effects throughout. And while I think the Bucs offensive line as a whole is good, I do think it's going to be hard to weather the loss of a left tackle. Now, they do have time at this point to really season up that starter, like that swing tackle, where like it probably was smart for the Bucs to do this now, where they have all of training camp to acclimate. I believe it's Charlie Heck, which is a great name, by the way. Just, I love that. And he's going to get a chance now to work with the starters and sort of acclimate. So it's not like he's going to get thrown in the middle of a game or like thrown in after Wirfs goes down in week 1 to week 2. He'll be more prepared than you would expect. Like this isn't a week to week change, but like Dave said, there's no way to replicate Wirfs' ability with the swing tackle. It's just there's going to be a clear downgrade there. So the Bucs will have to figure that out. We know Baker Mayfield likes to run around and likes to hold the ball, and that might be a little bit more difficult with Wirfs out of the lineup. But an opportunity for these young Falcons pass rushers to make some noise, because that's been a constant problem is sometimes these things happen and set up for the Falcons to have an opportunity to create pass rush, and the pass rush just never really gets there. So
yeah, I've super excited about this young group. Obviously, it's not going to be all roses right away, but anything you can do to get that confidence up right away, even if you have to beat, a guy named Charlie Heck, which just seems mean-spirited, then you got to do it.
Yeah. You got to take advantage, and I think that's been one problem with the Falcons pass rush. They just haven't really been able to take advantage, but hopefully now with these young guys we can. And I think there's a lot of things I like about the direction of this edge room, just in general, and I hope that we can continue on a positive path with the edge room, and whether that's Arnold Ebiketie getting to play a little bit more and better, or Zach Harrison returning, or these young guys seizing starting roles quickly. Leonard Floyd, I feel like he's also just like there. It's just nice to have a guy like Floyd who's like basically a perennial 8 to 10 sack guy, just kind of there to help out your rotation. I'm excited to see what they can do, and I think this certainly opens up the ability for them to have success as a pass rush in week 1 that may not have necessarily been there before, given how sort of good the Bucs have been on the offensive line. So however they do it, they just got to find a way to get pressure on Baker, because we know if they do, then Baker's certainly liable to make some mistakes. So I think we could see it happen. I'm excited. Obviously nobody wants injuries to happen, especially this time of year. But I guess the only upside of this is that he does get like a whole month before the season, maybe 2 months to actually recover. So he's only maybe going to miss a month instead of like 3 months in the majority of the season. So hopefully Wirfs can come back healthy. Just not, maybe just if he had to miss the Falcons games, we could maybe fudge that a little bit. But best of luck obviously to Wirfs in his recovery here. And great player. Shame to have him out. Always sucks to see the injuries, but got to look at multiple angles, and what is a Bucs problem can be a Falcons solution, hopefully. But Falcons didn't necessarily have problems beating the Bucs last year. That wasn't really our issue. It was really kind of the stuff in between that ended up being the problem, unfortunately. But yeah, we can do you want to talk about the Cousins thing at all, Dave? I do want to give you an opportunity, but we don't have to linger on it, certainly.
Yeah, this is just the long and short of it is, like, I think Trayshawn Diaz put it well in his write-up yesterday, which was there's blame on both sides. Obviously, the Falcons waiting so long to pull Cousins from the lineup last year when he was clearly not himself, not playing well, was ultimately the source of a lot of misery. But, I think both sides have some buyer's remorse. Like, if you had shown them everything that happened up to this point, Kirk would have stayed in Minnesota. The Falcons would have signed Jacoby Brissett or something, and still drafted Penix. And this would be a happier situation maybe for both sides, although Kirk Cousins could very well have been Wally pipped by somebody else in Minnesota too, if he was playing the way he was playing, even if it wasn't JJ McCarthy ultimately. So I just think at this point he's honest, which I guess is admirable, but it has the effect of continually bringing this back up, which I think I said it in our Falcoholic chat the other day, that like he's obviously like a cool person, like somebody that you'd like personally, but as a football player on your favorite football team, there are many, many reasons where I'm like, I've had enough Kirk Cousins. Like, either let's trade Kirk Cousins so he can go be somewhere else where he has a better shot to play, or let's not hear anything about Kirk Cousins, backup quarterback, from now until the end of the year when he moves on. So, but I'm kind of done with the situation. I know that I'm not, because it's going to come back up again and again somehow, but I would really like to be done talking about Kirk Cousins. I really, really, really would.
Yeah, at times it has been interesting. Like, I did enjoy sort of the discourse around whether he would be traded or cut and all that. That was kind of an interesting topic. That's a little bit more intellectually stimulating. This is just rehashing stuff that we already knew, and like, I don't know why Kirk feels the need to say it, like, I don't think that helps him, but that is who he is, for better or worse. Like, he's just gonna say what he's thinking. And yeah, I think it was obvious that he was playing hurt. And again, like, if you'd listened to this program or read stuff that we put out there, it's like, it's very likely that Kirk was probably downplaying the severity of his injury because he was worried about Penix taking over. He's out there practicing with Penix every single day. He knows what's going to happen if Penix gets on the field. So, like, while I think it's understandable that he wouldn't bench himself, I think it's totally understandable from many angles. I think the bigger issue is, like, the combination of him, like, putting himself before the team, which, again, it's a lot to ask him to not do that. It's a lot to ask any player to do that to that extent. But the other side of it is that we should expect the coaching staff to be able to see what we are lay people, right? I mean, we like to consider ourselves maybe like a step above the average layperson, but that's about it. We're not football professionals. We are, professional amateurs, right? That enjoy watching football and analyzing it, but we're not coaches. We can see there's something wrong with Kirk. There's something wrong with this picture. He's not able to get the velocity. He's not really able to execute the offense. Like, this is looking very poor, and the team doesn't seem to. I mean, I kind of can't believe that they didn't know, right? Or they. I mean, it's one thing to know. It's another thing to actually bench, right? So, how much did they know, and how much was it a discussion of, like, should we give him an opportunity to right the ship? Is it really a health thing or not? How much do we know about this? Like, I don't think it was handled well by the team. Like, they I think are just as culpable in this, in terms of, why didn't we make the playoffs? We didn't make the playoffs because of that mid-season slump that was caused by Kirk Cousins' injury and, some missed coup kicks in that one game. Coups suffered enough. We know what happened there. But the team has a responsibility. The coaching staff has a responsibility to pull an obviously injured player, and they also failed in that regard. So I know a lot of people want to heap all the blame on Kirk, and he deserves some of it, but for the reasons we mentioned, you can't just rely on these hardcore professional athletes to take themselves out of the game, because we know that they won't do it for multiple reasons.
Yeah, it's funny because the Falcons, took the risk of drafting Penix, right, and angering Cousins, but they did so to have sort of the long-term, man of the future. And I understand that they didn't want to play him before they felt he was ready, or they didn't want to, turn it over to Penix, knowing that they would not go back to Cousins. Like, I understand this. I don't know to what extent, like, this was purely a decision in the hands of Raheem Morris and Zach Robinson versus also the front office, also ownership. Like, who knows? We have no real idea of the kind of discussions that were happening behind the scenes here. But at some point, absolutely, when your playoff hopes are disappearing and you have problems on defense that you know about, you have problems with your kicker, and you have a major problem with your quarterback, there's like one problem there that is easy to fix, and that is pulling Kirk Cousins because he's not playing well enough to win games. And the fact that it took him almost losing that game to the Raiders, which was just very, very difficult to watch, for them to actually do it, tells you how dug in they were for whatever reason. Again, we can only speculate, because like any other team with a quarterback situation, the Falcons were not going to be forthcoming about it, and they were going to be slow to make a move. We've seen it with plenty of other franchises. But ultimately, whether you assigned 75% of the blame to the Falcons and 25 to Kirk, or the reverse of that, like both sides dug in until it was a little bit too late, and it did cost them last year. And it's only through the grace of Michael Penix that there is a lot more hope this year. And at the moment, Kirk Cousins is still here, and if he remains here and he is healthier, he's a very good, albeit expensive, backup plan for Penix as well. So I want to move forward, like this. There is so much to be excited about with this Falcons team. I really believe that, but it is impossible not to, every time this come up, dwell on it a little bit.
Yeah.
So there we are.
There we are. I think we've kind of covered it. It's there's a lot of factors, and I don't think you should get too mad at any one part of this, but it's unfortunate because I think this team was capable of making the playoffs, and considering the game they gave the Commanders, who made it to the NFC Championship game, they were capable of winning a playoff game, I think. Now, obviously, if they played that defense they played against Carolina in the last week of the season, they weren't going to win a damn thing. So who knows what was going on with that, but hopefully that's behind us. That's my hope here with Jeff Ulbrich returning to the fold. But I think the Falcons obviously made the right decision with Penix and getting an actual quarterback in here, because Kirk was always going to be a temporary solution. Even if I think he had played well, this was probably like 2025 was probably going to be the season where the Falcons are still planning to start him, but there may have been a competition. We don't know. And now it's like, well, we saw Kirk really fall off a cliff, and now if we didn't have Michael Penix, we'd be in very dire straits. So that's one training camp battle we don't have to talk about tonight because it's settled. We got Michael Penix in there. I think everyone feels pretty good about it. We'll have to see, obviously, how well Michael Penix performs, and that's kind of an open question, but I know hopes are high, and there's a lot of reasons to be excited about what Penix can do for this team. But there's a number of other spots on this roster that are up for grabs going into training camp. Some important battles to watch that are worth covering, that are not anywhere near as settled as the Penix situation. And did you have one in mind that you'd like to get us started with, Dave? Or?
Yeah, I've been going back and forth. I think maybe in some ways the two most vital battles on the roster are going to be in the secondary. And I think when you come right down to it, the one that I'll have my eye on probably the most is safety. Just because you have, I don't view DeMarco Hellams as vying for a starting spot, but I think he could. On any of the last 3 years of Falcons teams, I think you can argue he would have definitely been in the running for a starting spot heading into this year. But he has Jordan Fuller in front of him, who has that Raheem Morris connection, who, aside from last year's kind of mysteriously terrible time in Carolina, has been a pretty quality safety. And then you have Xavier Watts, who I think is a tremendously exciting rookie who will start, even if it's not this year. But, sort of what is at stake there is safety next to Jesse Bates was a bit of a liability next year. We didn't expect that to be the case with Justin Simmons, but he definitely struggled a bit a year ago, whereas now you have, 2 or 3, depending again if Hellams is inserting himself into that competition at all, younger players going for that spot. And sort of the upside of that with Bates and Watts, if he manages to win that job, is having 2 guys who are excellent deep downfield over the middle of the field and have, tremendous ball hawk instincts too. So you could be looking at a couple of turnover machines at safety, probably the best tandem the Falcons have had in a bit. To me, that's tremendously exciting. And if Watts isn't ready and you have Fuller instead, there's ups and downs associated with that. But either way, the fact that your options seem better than the version of Simmons we got a year ago, and you have an actual competition there, I think is good for the team. And it'll be exciting to watch. It's sort of a vital starting spot up for grabs, and it's one of the only ones on the roster that truly is.
Yeah, no, I think you nailed it. And I think a lot of people would go straight to slot corner, but I appreciate that you went to safety because we get to talk about my guy, Xavier Watts, who's my favorite draft pick. And was such a steal and just like a guy that I just really wanted to end up in Atlanta because of what he can enable this defense to do finally, which I think is what the team was hoping they'd be able to do more with Justin Simmons, which is actually play Bates more like in a robber role, or let him come closer to the line of scrimmage at times and not have a liability on the back end, be able to rotate and disguise their coverages. And they just weren't able to do that last year. Simmons did lack the step, and that he wasn't really capable of doing the super deep coverage at the level that Bates was, and it just limited their arsenal in that regard. But Bates is such a great overall safety. Like, you get someone like Xavier Watson, who's really his only weakness is that he's just not the biggest safety and not the most like overwhelmingly physical. I think he's a much better tackler than he was a year ago. He's perfectly fine in that regard. He's not a thumper. He's a coverage safety, but he's arguably the best ball hawk in college football and a tremendous guy in terms of coverage instincts and his ability to play multiple spots and do a lot of great stuff. I would be shocked like if he wasn't starting, and that's not meant as a slight to Jordan Fuller. I think, like you said, Fuller is a guy that probably was miscast in Carolina on a defense that was arguably the worst in football. No one is going to look good when you get to that situation, right? Like, it kind of drags everyone down. And it's not to say that Fuller's probably like a great starter or anything, but I think Fuller is a serviceable at worst starting safety. So he is a competition piece for Watts and provides that really solid floor behind Watts and just gives the Falcons a really good depth piece there at worst. But Watts' upside is so crazy, and he just fits so well with what Bates does, giving the Falcons this like super ball hawk tandem of safeties that like I need to see Watts. Like I like, no slander intended towards Jordan Fuller. I just need to see Watts. I need to see Watts out there. I think he's going to crush it. I'm super excited to have him out there. But like you said, it's a very important battle because the secondary, while I think it has like arguably like the best players on the defense and, AJ Terrell and Jesse Bates, it also has some openings, and the safety opposite Bates has been one kind of consistently ever since Bates arrived. Yeah. So, okay, I was going to say something about DeMarco Hellams too. Like you said, Hellams, I agree with you. I think Hellams is a little bit more like box focused. I think Fuller has a little bit more of that ability to go deep as well as play in the box. And I think, like, again, it's really nice to have Hellams here. Like, I think they were actually depending on Hellams a lot last year to be their third safety, and obviously missed basically the entire season. What do you think? I agree with you. I'm not sure he's really going to be a factor in the safety battle. What do you think about having Helms back in the mix? I mean, are you excited to see him out there?
Oh, 100%. And I think one of the things, and I'll kind of transition into, it's not really a battle, but another position that, there's some snaps up for grabs. They missed Helms and Trice a lot last year, and they tried to replace them with two established vets. And, for a variety of reasons, we'll call it the Jimmy Lakeification of the defense as one of them. But it just did not work out for Matthew Judon and Justin Simmons the way that we hoped. And I think that with Helms, he gives you a lot on special teams. He has that reputation dating back to Alabama of being a really high-end special teamer, which I think is earned. But he also, when we saw him in his rookie season, he was better than I expected him to be in coverage, which isn't to say great, but certainly better than I thought. He was really good against the run. And so having that kind of player as, an early down option, if you want to mix and match a little bit, having somebody who can play special teams at a high level on a team where that's important. Marquise Williams, he has a clear say in how this roster is built, as he should. This team keeps capable special teamers around, Helms being one of them. And then just having that youth and ability there, and then having somebody like Braylon Trice, who this is hyperbole, so bear with me here, but could be maybe your most reliable run defender off the edge in some regards, like at least until Jalen Walker gets his feet under him a little bit. Those are big deals. Those are things that you missed a year ago, and now the fact that you've upgraded your roster so much that we're talking about Trice maybe playing 10 snaps a game, you're talking about Helms being the fourth safety, a true reserve, mostly special teams. That tells you that A, they've upgraded the team, but also that you're getting two key pieces back, that if you do have any injuries, you do have any unforeseen circumstances, you have some capable young guys that we didn't get to see enough of to this point. So I think it's going to be a big deal for him to come back. And I think I've been accused before of like caring too much about the deep reserves on this roster, but we see what happens when you don't have them. And it's a big, big deal.
Yes. As a fellow roster projection sicko myself, I love the deep roster battles. I love the roster construction stuff. And they do have like legitimate depth now at edge that they just haven't had in a really long time. And you know, we're really talking about like how many snaps is Leonard Floyd going to get a game? Like if James Pierce Jr. and Jalen Walker are both good, like how much is Ebiketie going to play? How much is Leonard Floyd going to play? Like Zach Harrison, how much is he going to play? Like where before it was like, oh my God, who's going to play if Arnold Ebiketie has to take a breather? Like if Judon has to leave the field, you know, and obviously Judon wasn't exactly a huge plus on the field last season either, but it was like, if these guys aren't playing, like what are we doing? And it feels like we've taken a big step up from there at multiple positions. Safety, great example of that with Helms, with Fuller behind Bates and Watts. And I think that room, like that four grouping of safeties is just so rock solid. Like I'm just really comfortable with that group as a whole. And hopefully we don't have to test that depth too much. We could just kind of deploy them selectively as needed. But it's an exciting group, and I'm really excited to see if Watts can sort of hit the ground running and be that sort of second round like hit that we just haven't seen from Fontenot really. There's been a lot of guys that have contributed. You know, I think Bergeron's obviously an example of that, but I think I'm hoping Watts can be, well, technically Watts was third round, but there was a trade involved with the picks, and it was this, you know, the equivalent, and, you know, there was some machinations that went on, but that day two hit that we just haven't really gotten like a slam dunk day two pick out of Fontenot, and I'm hoping Watts can sort of break that trend. But the next one, probably the one that everyone was expecting us to cover first, slot corner, which even I think this one is like much more wide open, where like we don't really know who has the advantage. I mean, obviously, I think D'Alford will get the first shot as the veteran, and I think there's a fair chance that this scheme will be just better for him to play in, and he could look better. But we also have an exciting rookie, obviously, in Billy Bowman Jr., who the team has said they want to play slot. That's a position change for him, but something that, you know, I think a lot of fans are sort of already penciling him in there. I keep telling people not to write off Natrone Brooks, who might have looked like the best slot player in his like 40 snaps in the slot last season. And then, you know, is Clark Phillips going to get more opportunities to play in the slot? Which, I mean, I personally I'm not super into that, but he could also be a factor there. So that's one I think is pretty wide open, and there's a lot of interesting names competing at this time.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where I think the ideal outcome, kind of like with Xavier Watts, we know what the Falcons would love to see happen there, which is Billy Bowman wins the job. Like, he's great slot corner right out of the gate. You have a couple of rookies on the back end who can grow into significant roles and offer you really game-changing potential. They drafted these guys knowing full well that they were really good at forcing turnovers and making plays on the ball. So that would be the ideal outcome. But unlike with safety, where it's kind of an A, B, to your point, you know, there are a lot of sneaky options here. Like D'Alford, obviously, we've heard from the man himself that, you know, he feels like the way that the defense was called, administered, et cetera, last year was a factor in him having a massive down year. I've said before that he reminds me a little bit of Robert McClain that way, a player who came out of nowhere for the Falcons, surprised for a year, was really good for another year, and then cratered. But unlike Robert McClain, his story with the Falcons is not over yet. I still like D'Alford. I still think he's a player that has a lot to recommend him. I think he's very much in the mix. You could still talk yourself into Natron Brooks having a chance. You could talk yourself into Clark Phillips, even though the Falcons apparently have talked themselves out of Clark Phillips as the slot corner repeatedly in the last couple of years. So it's an interesting mix. I do think that it's one of those positions where a really good summer from somebody could lead to a surprise. But at the end of the day, I'm still expecting Bowman to ultimately win that. I think it's Alford will get that first crack. I do think he has ground to make up after last year with the way that things went to win that job back. I would be very comfortable with him if he earns it, of course. I think we saw a couple of years ago in a more physical attacking defense that he did pretty well. But, to me, the Falcons are really banking on having a massive influx of rookie talent and that making a huge difference on defense, which sort of fits with what we've seen from Raheem Morris during his time with the Rams, where they just kept hitting on these guys, not necessarily early round picks either, like they've had for Atlanta, but, mid to late round guys taking off and making a major impact. So I would not be astonished to see that kind of play out at the slot corner and at safety as well.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the team would love to have Billy Bowman there because, again, I think the ethos of this secondary has become take the ball away. And we obviously Jesse Bates has been one of the best there, and Xavier Watts, Billy Bowman Jr. are like the two of the three like top interception getters in all of college football. The number 3 guy is Kobe Bryant, who is here as a UDFA. So like the Falcons have made a clear commitment to we're going to add ball hawks. We're going to try to take the ball away and make that sort of the ethos of our defense. We're going to create turnovers to kind of maybe cover up some limitations that we may have with the pass rush and otherwise. If we can create turnovers, we can kind of get around that, give the ball back to our hopefully super-powered offense and see that offense just score a bunch and then let us pin our ears back and let our young pass rushers go after it. So that sounds, like a good idea to me. I hope it works out. And yeah, Billy Bowman, like I think his build makes a lot more sense in the slot than at safety. I think the lack of height is not going to matter so much there. And he's very physical. He just needs to tackle better. It's not some guys, it's like they just don't want to do it. And that means you can't play slot. That's not the case with Billy Bowman. He wants to do it. He wants to do it too much. Like he needs to just calm down a little bit. But the nice thing about playing slot typically is that if you're going for this line of scrimmage or behind the line of scrimmage tackle and you miss it, that's probably not going to give up a big gain usually. If you're playing deep safety and you miss that tackle, now you're in big trouble. So, hopefully he can kind of get a smooth transition. But yeah, whether he starts week 1 or not, I agree with you, Dave. He's going to be the starter sooner or later. And we'll just have to see how quickly that develops. But I think that and safety are the two like critical ones on defense that I think they're just really up in the air at this point. Like we don't know who's going to win. And that's exciting. It's also nice that it's not like every position on defense. That's an underrated part of this. So
it's a nice change of pace. We'll say that. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, sticking with the defense, I was also thinking about like the interior spots. And I think part of that is that it seems like they're committed to keeping David Onyemata for now. At this point, I don't know if they're planning to cut him or not. They could obviously save a lot of cap space, but I understand not doing it because if you do cut David Onyemata, you're basically like, it's a bunch of young guys and Contavious Street, and I guess Morgan Fox. But Morgan Fox just got here, so it's a lot to put on Morgan Fox to just show up and provide veteran leadership to this team. But to me, it's like you have to think Onyemata is starting in one spot, but who's starting in the other spot? And it seems from like early returns, like Ruka Rororo has the very clear lead there. But I think that's a really interesting one. And obviously I think we'd all be super excited if Rororo is the week 1 starter opposite David Onyemata.
I had to find my mute button there. I am fully expecting it to be Rook, and it's one of those things where a lot of times if you have a disappointing rookie season, it doesn't bode well for your career, and we do have to acknowledge that perhaps that's the case. But I also think that last year for the Falcons was a bit of a unique situation where they just seemed like pathologically against getting any of their young guys in these games. And so Rook took I forget how many weeks now, 5 or 6, to even get on the field. He was hurt. We didn't see much of him. The flashes we did see looked pretty good, but it was very limited playing time for a guy you traded up to get in the second round. But I think it did underscore the very little that we saw of him, that he is very useful as a run defender right now. And he has the talent, physical ability to be a quality pass rusher on the interior as well. And to me, when you have jumbled options like that, you look at the guy who is clearly the most talented overall, which I do think is Root. He has that level of talent to be a really good starter. And so you try to give him that first crack. You know that you're going to rotate guys heavily. And I think if you look at him, he's got a lead for a reason. I fully expect him to win the job there, and then you'll figure out the rest of the rotation sort of as you go. But if we know anything, it's that Nate Ollie is a really good defensive line coach. I think if you look at the teams that he has coached for sort of before and after he's been with them, there's some striking trends there for the pass rush up front. And he says he wants these guys going. He doesn't want them thinking too much. He doesn't want them dropping randomly into coverage or, reading and reacting so much as just trying to kill the quarterback. And to me, that is great for Rook, who just needs that developmental time, that aggression. We know the run defense is kind of as advertised because we saw it last year, as limited as it was. So to me, he is that front runner. Onyemata is your other guy, but I think at some point in the 2025 season, if they keep him around, someone else is going to be starting for him because he'll be limited at some point by injury. I think we know that. So the fact that you've kind of rebuilt this rotation, that you do have exciting young guys there, is a big plus. But I do think, again, it's not a rookie, but I do think your young guy is going to be in the driver's seat for that job.
No, I think so too. And I certainly am not opposed. If Onyemata is healthy and they obviously like his leadership ability and they don't want to totally gut that core, with Grady exiting. I still won't be surprised if he's training camp cut, at the end of training camp, basically a final roster cut, just because of the money. It's so much money, but he's not ancient. I mean, he could still, he could, I think he can still be effective if he's healthy, especially if this scheme is just a better fit for him. Just not sure how that's going to play out, but I do like the look of this rotation, and I was interested to see that they brought, Taquan Graham back. That he was sort of the only other guy that they did bring back, and I've always liked Graham. So I'm happy that he's here. Hopefully he can stay healthy. Looks like LaCale London is bulked up to play nose tackle, which is great because I mean, again, I think London was always kind of a sort of underrated rotational guy, and now looks like he'll get a chance to make the roster because he's kind of the only nose tackle they brought in. The other guys I'll mention is sort of the designated pass rusher type, which Morgan Fox probably going to run away with that. But, Contavious Street's in that mold, and Brandon Dorless too might, him and Zach Harrison, if they're sort of playing that multiple inside-outside role, the two of them could also be competing for that sort of pass rush specialist. If they do double 3 tech looks or whatever it is that, some of the Dan Quinn craziness that we used to see. I'm excited to see how those guys could do, because I think Dorless, just like Rook, didn't really get an opportunity, and the team seems like they're ready to give him one this season.
And it's a needed opportunity too, and I am actually, I barely mentioned him when I was talking about that rotation, but I am very excited about Dorless. And I think, again, infectious enthusiasm from Nate Ollie there, but he's also very excited about Dorless. He's very excited about Zach Harrison. And I think we're going to see opportunities that simply weren't there a year ago. And I also think, kind of going back to the Kirk Cousins discussion we had earlier, where if both sides could look ahead a year, they would go their separate ways well before. I think if Raheem Morris could sort of travel back in time a year, he would not have hired Jimmy Lake. I think there were many, many reasons to think that ultimately Morris had to put more of a thumb on the scale for that defense in order for it to function the way that he wanted to. ultimately it'll probably be a really good thing for somebody like Dorless, not just to have the playing time, but to have a different coaching staff in place for that playing time to come.
Yeah, yeah. I think as much as I think like Ulbrich was not a like sexy hire, it didn't really get anyone super excited. I think Ulbrich is maybe like more now than in the past. Like just the guy they needed maybe. And I know like my concern is like, are they too familiar? Because that was I think the problem with Lake to some extent was like, I think Lake might need to get his ass kicked a little bit, Raheem. Like you might need to get this going, and maybe it eventually happen. But like when you're friends and you've worked so closely together, it can be difficult to do that. It's difficult to bridge that. But I think Ulbrich, like he's just such a good coach. Like he's not the fanciest. He's not the flashiest. He's not the most. Oh, this guy's going to be the next head coach. He's the hottest name on the market, like Robert Saleh-esque figure. But I think he's what he does, and we saw this in New York, even with a bunch of garbage trash can offenses, right? Makes it really hard to play good defense. Didn't seem to slow him down. Now, I don't think the Falcons have to worry about that, thankfully. But, like, if you can orchestrate consistently statistically good defenses with a garbage can offense, like, that is impressive. That is impressive. And if that we don't need him to be giving us this top 5 defense that the Jets would have needed to compete, right? We just need like 18. Like, can we do 18? I'd be down for 18. Like that would be fine with me. And I think that's not out of the question either. I mean, we've seen this. Most of these same guys under Ryan Nielsen were like 15th. So it's like I think it could swing back the other way. And I think Ulbrich is just a great guy to have in here. And we're not having a camp battle at defensive coordinator, but I do think his presence, like you said, could be really important for these guys. Not only getting more playing time, but just being in a system that's just a lot better overall.
Yeah, and I know that there's some level of discomfort with like, well, he's Raheem's buddy, but this is to some extent that's how coaching decisions are made. We know that people prefer to work with people they're familiar with, and it'll come from a reference from somebody they know well. If it's not somebody they know well, and it's worth remembering that Morris and Ulbrich did work well together in 2020 in very bad circumstances. They were able to coax some improvement out of a team that was basically dead in the water from the moment they hit the field in the 2020 season. So that is not nothing. We're not going to necessarily achieve miracles here, but between the talent upgrades and the defensive coordinator upgrades, a light level of optimism for this defense, I think, is very warranted. We do have to see how those camp battles play out, but there is a baseline level that I think we can expect, even if I fully expect Jeff Ulbrich's love of Divine Diablo to, cause maybe some heartache along the way.
Yeah. I mean, is that the last battle you want to touch on? I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, I think maybe it is.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, I mean, Divine Diablo, Troy Anderson. It's kind of a log jam because we know Caden Ellis is going to start, but otherwise, like, there's a lot of guys there all competing for, that spot opposite Caden Ellis. And like while they haven't really they've kind of downplayed it. I mean, I think it's not out of the question that Jalen Walker is going to play some linebacker too. So like, it's kind of crowded there. So I'm curious to see what happens.
I am too, and I do expect, I'm trying to figure out, and I think camp and preseason will start to tell the story of where Jalen Walker is going to play. I think primarily he's going to play edge. I think that's the expectation. But given his college career, given his ability to play multiple roles, something that I think the Falcons are very excited about, you're going to see him play some inside linebacker. So that raises the inevitable question of, how do you divvy up the rest of those snaps? And my thought process, just looking at Diablo's contract and the many Jets fans who have told me some variation of Ulbrich really wanted Diablo while he was in New York but couldn't make it happen. He's the front runner for that starting job. And I know that, he wasn't a great player with the Raiders by any stretch of the imagination, but the speed is intriguing. Maybe with some coaching in a different role in Atlanta, he kind of takes off, and then whatever Troy Anderson gives you as a very capable special teamer, which is something that we forget a little bit, but was key to his role early on in Atlanta. That's all a bonus. Whatever you get from Troy Anderson at this point is probably a bonus, just given how the injuries have stacked up. If he's totally healthy, do I think he should have that job? Absolutely. Like the coverage ability there that he showed us at times when he's been healthy is well worth it. But I don't expect the Falcons to start the year with Troy Anderson as the starter. I expect it to be Diablo, and you'll get Anderson and Jalen Walker on the field in certain situations. You have a lot of versatility there, but that's sort of my working expectation. And that's sort of I guess the one exception to the rule that like the younger homegrown player taking that job, I just don't see it for Anderson at this point.
Yeah. I mean, look, like Anderson's still got this guy high potential. He's still one of my favorite players to just hope has a breakout. And it felt like we were there in that game, that Saints game. Like it felt like it was happening. And it was, and gets hurt on special teams like late in the fourth quarter. It's just, I mean, it's ridiculous. You hate to see it. But Troy Anderson at this point, like it's kind of, we have to see it now. And like he could still have a long NFL career. It's just like, this is the turning point between like, are you going to be an NFL starter, or are you just going to be like a probably like very good like reserve / special teams linebacker that could have like a 10-year career? I mean, without question. But this is kind of the turning point for his career, and he's got to beat out a guy in Divine Diablo that, like you said, hasn't necessarily been a great linebacker, but also has athleticism as a former safety, and seems to fit this defense really well. Like this is the Deion Jones. He's not as good as prime Deion Jones. I'm not saying that, but like this is that archetype: smaller, faster, coverage-focused linebacker that's going to more flow around, while Caden Ellis is going to be your big nasty in the middle. I think this is a great fit for Diablo, and that's why I have a lot of confidence, like you said, in him starting. I hope Anderson can make it a competition. Like I would love to see the team have like to really think hard about who's going to start, because more than likely linebacker is one of those spots. These guys are smashing into offensive linemen and running backs and making tackles more than any other position on the field. These guys get hurt. So if Troy Anderson can be good, I think he will, even if he doesn't win the job, get an opportunity to play and show that he deserves a chance, because there's future opportunities with this Falcons team as well, as time goes on. The way that this stuff is constructed with the contracts and things, Anderson could get a second contract if he plays his way into it. But it's just, I agree. I think it's going to be difficult to get past Divine Diablo, because I think he's the one that Ulbrich wanted, right? They paid him the money. It's pretty obvious that like that type of contract, you're expecting him to be a starter for you. And I think he gives the Falcons just what they didn't have after Troy Anderson got hurt, which is someone who can run. Linebacker. Love Nate Landman. Like, shout out to Nate Landman for just making it work and giving us that one season where it was amazing. That man could not move last year, and it was obvious. And Caden Ellis, like, he's basically an edge rusher and a linebacker body. So, like, you're not really asking him to cover like that. So they just didn't really have any options after Troy Anderson got hurt, and you could tell that they were just getting eviscerated over the middle of the field. And then with D. Alfred's issues in the slot, it was just that middle area of coverage was just a nightmare. So you get to find Diablo in here. He should be able to give you some of that coverage ability that you're lacking. And if he doesn't, they brought in another safety they're going to try to convert to linebacker, and Malik Verdon. So, perhaps Verdon can be a surprise guy too, deeper down the depth chart. But I like what they did. And like, okay, this was obviously an issue with last year's roster. Didn't have the speed at linebacker. And I know folks have mentioned J.D. Bertrand as well. I'm sure he'll be in the mix. They went out and got, Divine Diablo to also be there with Troy Anderson, who has that athleticism. And then they went and got another safety to convert to linebacker, just in case that wasn't enough athleticism. So, hopefully between all these guys, and linebacker, notably, is like a spot where you can frequently find, day three and UDFA types can come in and contribute. So, we'll see how the depth chart plays out. But I do think I know a lot of people are really nervous about Diablo, but I feel like how much they like honed in on him and like paid him to me screams that like, okay, this guy was miscast. He was not used correctly. We know exactly how to use him. We think he's actually good, like really good. And so we just need him. Go get him. That's going to be exactly what we need. So I hope that will work. And it doesn't hurt that he has like maybe the best name in the NFL also. So, I mean, that helps a lot.
He's top 5. Easy.
Yeah.
You
It's
can't beat
there.
that.
Yeah. Other than Major Booty, who I don't know if he made it to the NFL yet and from college football, but that's maybe up there in the top 5 as well. But Divine Diablo, top-notch stuff. Like he with that name, I mean, the ceiling is, it could be anywhere. We don't even know. It's up there somewhere. But yeah, any other spots or anything else you want to touch on before we start wrapping up?
On offense, I think it's all things that I will get made fun of for mentioning, but I am I am excited.
Yeah.
It's a safe space here.
Mm-hmm.
I am excited about, third running back, fourth wide receiver. The most reliable criticism I think I get in the comments at the Falcoholic, and if you're watching this, you know who you are, is every time I say I'm not convinced that the Falcons have a good wide receiver 4 solution, people are like, come on, like seriously, like that's what you're complaining about. But I am interested because they don't have a lot of experience there. If you have an injury, like who gets inserted into that lineup? Is it Hodge, who, gives you some spectacular plays, but maybe isn't the most consistent guy you want to have out there? Or is it somebody else? And then, of course, tight end 3 is a very, very big deal for a lot of people. Is it my man Felipe Franks, or is it somebody new? We don't know.
Tegan Catoriano. That's a guy.
It could be very well be another great name.
Yeah. Could be him. Yeah. No, I mean,
it could be him. You don't know. Yeah.
I felt like Felipe Franks' time in Atlanta was done after Arthur Smith left, but no, apparently the Felipe Franks love extends beyond Arthur Smith. It's no longer just an Arthur Smith thing.
It's funny because all of the guys that we thought were Arthur Smith guys, like Parker Hesse, Michael Pruitt, more so maybe Pruitt, and Felipe Franks. No, the one guy that has his heart is Jonnu Smith. We've seen that firsthand now. He's followed him to Pittsburgh.
Yeah. No, those are all good ones. Some quick takes on those. They gave Hodge a single-digit number, so obviously he's a starter now. Like I don't make the rules. That's just how this works. No, it's like Bijan, Michael Penix, Kyle Pitts, Darnell Mooney, Drake London. Those are the other guys that have single-digit numbers on offense. The only other guys like that are Divine Diablo and Jesse Bates and Younghoe Koo, obviously. But so I mean, I'm just saying, that I can't argue with that logic. But no, I like Hodge. I mean, but like you said, we don't really know. Like when he had to step in, it was like, oh, I like this actually. Like especially in overtime, I love this. Yeah, this is great. I don't know how consistent that would be. It did seem like the team was maybe like working with him as the wide receiver 3 in a specific game where they had him sort of play over Ray McLeod to test out sort of, his size and blocking is better. He's probably not as good receiver as Ray McLeod, but what does that add to the offense? They ended up going back to McLeod after that. So, I don't know if they made any decisions, but just they were interested in testing it out. But looking at the receivers they brought in, they're all big, other than Jamal Agnew, who's your return specialist. Like they're all big body, physical, either big slots or outside guys. So, my thought is like maybe Ray McLeod is like locked in for this year because, they're paying him and he's good. But I don't know if long-term they want more of that like interchangeable inside, outside big slot as opposed to Ray, who is very good. Like definitely showed that he's outplaying the hell out of that contract and is a legit NFL wide receiver 3. But he's a slot only guy. And for this offense type, like a McVay offense, they really like to be able to rotate that slot and that outside receiver like a Drake London and make them interchangeable like the Rams would do with Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. Can't really do that as much with Ray. So, long term, I wonder if they will move that direction either with Hodge or with my guy Nick Nash, who's my like big sleeper. But they also brought in, they still have Casey Washington. They have Mekhi Polk, who was like a CFL All-Star. Quincy Skinner is another big receiver. Chris Blair's still here. He's been interesting at times. So, like, there's a lot of guys they brought in, and as always, those like wide receiver like 4, 5, 6 battles are going to be the most interesting at training camp. They seem to always be that way. So,
Oh yeah, 100%.
yeah, and like you said at tight end, that one's also a big open battle. So I'm interested to see like, is it going to be Franks? You know, he's the most proven special teamer. So like unironically, like it could be Franks for that reason. I know a lot of people are big fans of Josh Simon, but again, a UDFA coming in, and he's really only like a receiver at this point. He's an undersized tight end. Kind of find it hard to believe he'll just earn a roster spot outright. But yeah, I mean, there just isn't a lot of super compelling options right now. You know, taking Catoriano is like maybe the most established as like a former 5th rounder, I think. But he's dealt with a lot of injuries. So, you know, I guess we'll see if he can make it through training camp all good. But he is intriguing. He's someone who can block and was a good receiver in college. So, you know, kind of a buy low. Let's see if he's healthy and if we can get something out of him. But, you know, more than likely, if there's no injuries, like it's not going to be a big deal. But, you know, they need somebody at tight end 3 if they have to have someone step in. So, and yeah, running back is all of a sudden wide open too because, you know, Jason McClellan exits. Jashawn Corbin enters. Now we have like sort of a 4-way battle for the running back 3 spot. And, you know, I think that'll be interesting too. I think, you know, maybe the sleeper is if one of these guys can like earn the returner job, like Nate Carter or Jashawn Corbin. I know Corbin returned a lot of kicks, and so did Nate Carter. So they can like possibly factor in there. And we all know Jamal Agnew's thing is that he gets hurt. But he's good when he's healthy. So like, I wonder if that would cause the team. I think a lot of people just expect Carlos Washington to have this job now and should probably be the favorite, but you know, I don't know how much returning we can expect from Carlos Washington, and if they really want that extra returner or someone that they feel like has an upside there, that could have them leaning a different direction. So
it is, and it's fascinating too because the offense is in great shape on paper to the point where like none of these starting spots are up for grabs, which is great. You feel good about that, but there are, you know, injury concerns and what ifs everywhere, as there always is. So, you know, on the defensive side, you're talking about like game changing from week 1 position battles. On the offense, it's maybe a little bit more subtle, but you're talking about potentially long-term depth options and week 8 crisis moment, like who's going to step up. So to me, it's always important, but in a year as critical as this one for basically everybody associated with the Falcons, including, for better or for worse, all of us, you know, those depth battles on offense will fly under the radar, but I think will be well worth watching.
yeah, I think they'll be fun, like not in like a I'm so terrified what will happen if like these guys don't work out way, but like I'm interested to see who could get some extra opportunities or who we could start developing. That's one thing I think maybe Fontenot hasn't got enough credit for. Maybe finally will, like if they make the playoffs this year, that this offense has been well put together. I think it's a testament to that like we're really not talking about, I mean, center, right? It's not a competition, but that's kind of the one question spot. But everywhere else is like, you're too deep at quarterback. You can't really say that for a lot of teams. You're completely too deep at running back. You can't really say that for a lot of teams where you have 2 guys that would start. You know, Bijan would start for almost anyone. Tyler Algier would probably start for more than half of the NFL teams. You got 2 tight ends. You got 3 great receivers. You got 2 bookend tackles, and you got an all-pro guard and another, you know, young ascending guard. So, like, you know, center's really the only question mark. So, you know, if this all works out, I hope that we can at least give Terry Fontenot some credit for assembling this offense. Even if the defense hasn't been assembled yet, you know, it's very much like a Lego sculpture that's like half done. And he, you know, unfortunately we keep stepping on the sharpest Lego possible as we go to assemble it every year. But I think things are shaping up, and I think the outcome of these battles will obviously be really important to determining mostly the defense, as we discussed. But you know, I think it's a reasonable amount of open positions that don't cause you to be alarmed, but like I think it's important to see like how quickly can these rookies see the field. Is this going to be different than 2024 where we had to wait to see rookies and we really didn't see them much? You know, Penix played 4 games, but that was kind of the most snaps of any rookie basically. So it's a big question mark, but I'm excited to see it, and I think this is going to be a fun training camp with a lot of interesting stuff going on. Nothing too crazy, nothing too scary, hopefully, but a lot of stuff that's intriguing in a good way, and legitimate, I think, hope for this team to surpass their previous streak of winless seasons that is now stretched on to I believe 7 now. So let's not make it 8. Basically, is the takeaway message here.
100%. Yeah, and it's worth remembering that as great as the season will hopefully be, 99% of the time, training camp is when your optimism runs the highest, your frustration runs the lowest. It's a great time. Maybe you don't get too invested in the hype because we all know how that goes, but enjoy the battles, enjoy seeing things play out before the rubber meets the road. It really is that time of year where hope springs eternal. Everyone's in great shape. Anything can happen. So I am very much looking forward to it, and we are very close to it. So
yes, almost there. 2 weeks from tomorrow, 2 weeks from Thursday, guys. So we're almost there. Got a couple of donations real quick. We got Matt G with the $10. Says, love the show. Thank you so much, Matt G. Appreciate you. And we got Corey with the $3. He apologizes in advance for bringing up Kirk Cousins again. But his question, when do you guys think the Falcons knew that they were going to draft Penix? And do you think that they should have given Cousins a heads up before the pick? Also, do you think the Falcons may have created a scenario where Cousins felt the need to hide his injury? So this is a two-pronged question. Well, I guess it's three-pronged technically. But when do I think the Falcons knew they were going to draft Penix? After they worked him out in person. What was that, like a week or 2 weeks before the draft? I think that was when they were when they officially decided that if he was there, they were going to draft him. I think they were heavily considering quarterback options the whole time. And you should, because again, Kirk Cousins was 36 years old, was coming off a season-ending injury. I don't think it's unreasonable to be exploring quarterback options. I think trading up or going for like the Drake May or Caleb Williams sweepstakes, that would have been dumb. But I think what they did, which was we're going to sit at 8, we're going to see who's here, and we're going to, operate off of that. I don't think they really knew when they signed Kirk that they were going to draft Penix like that. I think that's not the case. I think this came together late in terms of coalescing the whole picture. And I think, so there wasn't a whole lot of time to inform Kirk. Should they have given him a heads up? That would have been nice. But again, it's I get why they didn't, because it's we're going to possibly piss him off about drafting a quarterback when we don't even think the guy's going to be there. So are we going to risk just pissing him off for no reason? And then we don't draft a quarterback or what? So it's kind of dicey. I get it. It's I think they were probably just say nothing and then we'll deal with it if it does happen. But we don't want to piss him off and then not draft a quarterback. It just, so that's my take on it. But do you feel sort of similar, Dave, or?
Yeah, and I think the added wrinkle here too that again, Kirk Cousins is himself, and again, I think as a human being, he's honest to a fault. He's very open, and that's probably a good thing in 99% of situations he runs into. But if you had told him a week before the draft that you were going to take Michael Penix, and somebody had asked him, what do you think of the thought of the Falcons taking a quarterback? And he had kind of Ralph Wiggum'd the Falcons are taking Penix. We would have really been kind of up shit creek potentially, because no matter what teams like the Raiders say that they weren't interested in Penix, I think if there had been any inkling among teams that the Falcons were going to take him where they did, someone might have tried to jump them and that plan might have gone away. So I think if you're an NFL team, you are probably not going to tell Cousins, more than 10 minutes before you make the pick.
Yeah.
That you're going to make the pick. That's just reality. I can understand the hard feelings and so forth, but I do think the Falcons also were thinking about it, but then decided ultimately during that workout. They seem to have completely fallen in love with him there. And whether that's the best process or not, I think we all kind of understand why they did.
Yeah, it makes sense. And to the other half of the question, did the Falcons create a scenario where Cousins felt the need to hide his injury? I don't think they like created any situation. I mean, the situation is the situation for every starting quarterback, right? It's not unique to the Falcons. Now, maybe it's unique in that like Cousins knew he had the future of the franchise behind him, so he might have felt a certain type of way about that. But every starter in the NFL is probably feeling what Cousins was feeling to some extent. So I don't think the Falcons like set it up any worse. I mean, I think it's, again, I think Cousins did a completely, I guess, predictable thing for a veteran, especially a veteran approaching the end of his career, to do, which is to try to play through injury. And it was sort of up to the team at that point to stop him, like to be like, hey, you're hurt. You need to sit down. Like, this is going to hurt the team. This is going to hurt the season. You put a guy like Cousins in a bind like that. You put almost anybody in a bind like that. It's going to be really hard to be the team first guy when this is like maybe the last opportunity you're ever going to get to be an NFL starting quarterback. It's just like, think about the calculus mentally. Like you're asking Kirk Cousins to be a saint, right? And maybe he pretends to be that, but like very few of us would be able to make that choice correctly, right? It's not as easy as it looks from here. From here, it looks easy to me. It's like, oh yeah, I definitely helped the team, but it was a tough situation. The Falcons should have been like, the Falcons organization should have been the backstop after, 2 games or 3 games to be like, okay, like we need to stop this. Like, you're clearly not healthy. And yeah, I mean, I agree with what Joe Schmo's saying. It's like if Kirk would have actually benched himself for the injury, he'd probably be traded by now. He'd probably be elsewhere, starting for another team. And he has to suffer the consequences too. Like, this is not just the Falcons didn't make the playoffs. We're the ones paying the price. Kirk paid the price too, because he put 4 or 5 games of awful tape out there, which is going to terrify some teams, right? Especially when we're talking about the type of money he's making. So, that's sort of, I think the much of the answer as I can give. I mean, obviously we don't know the full details, probably never will, but yeah, it is what it is. It's a tough situation, and you expect your team to do, to maybe manage it a little bit better, and you would hope that the quarterback manage it a little bit better. But at the end of the day, these guys are definitely not perfect. That is maybe the biggest takeaway, is that guys are going to make mistakes. So. All right. Well, Dave, any final thoughts tonight before we wrap up? I think we've covered, I think, all of the major battles.
No, just that, again, I look at this defense, potentially what it could be, versus a year ago when our expectations, I think, were probably, in hindsight, obviously higher than they should have been, for the veteran additions and so forth. But just the young talent on hand, it's going to be fun to watch. So this team should be better than a year ago. The defense certainly should be better. It will certainly be more interesting, even if it's not better, just more interesting, dynamic players there. So, we're on the cusp of coming out of the long winter that is the summer before Falcons football. And we're going to get to see some good training camp battles, and God willing, everybody stays healthy. I think a better season that we've waited a long time for. So breathe it in, enjoy it, and God willing, it will actually be enjoyable at the end of the day.
I think I think we've suffered enough, Dave. Like, I think we're due for just a season where things go right. Like, and I'm not asking for like 2016 or anything. Just like, could we have like stuff just go right for like the majority of the season? And, just,
that would be awesome.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Like, nothing too crazy, but just, reasonable expectations being met.
Yeah.
Just break the streak. Like, break the streak, for God's sake. Yeah. Like, yeah, that's all I'm asking. Little things. Yeah. But guys, yeah, small things, small miracles maybe is what we need. But guys, thank you so much for joining us here on episode 336 of the Falcoholic Live. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe. It really helps us out. As we get closer to 10K subscribers, really excited about that. If you haven't yet given us a 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice, that helps us out a lot as well. We'd really appreciate that. Again, a reminder, July 26th, 6 p.m., Firemaker Brewing in Atlanta. Going to be our Falcons fan meetup and maybe live show, tech permitting. But that'll be, of course, after the big Saturday training camp practice. So hope to see you guys there. Again, thanks to BetOnline for sponsoring the show. Thanks to Dave Choate at the Falcoholic himself for helping us out here with the co-hosting in Adnan's absence. And I'm, of course, Kevin Knight at Falcoholic. Kevin, thank you guys so much for joining us. We will see you guys next time. Have a great night, folks.